Welcome to the Video Professor's series of computer learning tapes, the nation's #1 computer trainer. We'll take you step by step through learning to use your computer software. On the screen now are some other tapes available in our series. When using these tapes, we suggest you watch them in their entirety. Then go back with your computer and practice each step. In keeping with the Video Professor's dedication to giving you the best lesson possible, we have packed these tapes with information and sometimes move at a pace that is faster than you will be able to follow along with. Always pause or rewind the tape to learn each part. Now let's get started.
Welcome to my lesson on getting started with Windows 98, the new and improved version of the most popular operating system for today's personal computers. In this lesson, you'll learn what a computer system is comprised of and how it processes information. You'll discover the types of hardware that make up a computer system and what functions they serve. In addition, this lesson explains the basic features of the Windows working environment. I'll teach you how to identify and use the Windows 98 desktop tools. Then we'll look at file management and finally see how to change settings for the way you use your computer. Now, before we start the lesson, I'd like to introduce you to my student helper, Suzanne. Just follow along with her, and you'll be using this program in no time at all. So let's get started. Suzanne, many people think of a computer as a piece of machinery. The computer machine, or hardware, is only one part of the computing system. A computing system actually is comprised of 3 elements: the hardware, which you can see and touch, the software or programs which make the hardware do the work you want, and you, the user, the most important part of the system. Suzanne, let's break down a typical computer advertisement. Here's one from Mammoth Computers, where the system has a 300 MHz Pentium 2 processor with MMX technology, 64 megs of EDO RAM, and a 3.1 gig hard drive. The jargon can get intimidating, but don't worry. I'll explain how these pieces work together as a system and what they should do for you. We'll begin our tour with the hardware that handles input and output tasks, and start with the keyboard since it's the main component for entering data and instructions into your system. Our ad shows a 104-key Windows Enhanced keyboard. This keyboard covers the basic alphabet and number keys plus a full set of 12 function keys, a separate numeric keypad, and specialized movement keys. Most keyboards have all these keys. The Windows Enhanced phrase indicates some additional keys customized for Windows operating system commands. Suzanne, the ad also shows a 2-button mouse. This is also an input device for giving commands and selecting options by pointing and clicking on screen images. Instead of a mouse, some computers use a trackball or a touchpad to move the pointer. Other input devices that are common on personal computer systems are scanners and digital cameras. They allow you to capture visual images for storing on your hard drive. Some audio input devices are microphones and MIDI devices. All these components are used to put data into the computer or give commands. Once data is in and processed, the system needs output devices to give information back to the user. Some of the most common output devices are monitors, speakers, and printers. The monitor is the screen that displays your work. Our ad shows a 17-inch, which has a 15.6-inch viewable area. Monitor resolution varies widely. Resolution means the sharpness of the image. It is described in pixels or in dot pitch, and it's important to know the difference in these two descriptions. Pixels are little dots of light that make up the screen image. Pixel resolution is measured by number of dots across and down. Larger numbers mean sharper images. Our ad shows a maximum resolution of 768 by 1024, which will give good clear images. Dot pitch is a measure of the space between the pixels, so a lower number means less space between or a sharper image. Speakers are also pretty standard output devices, since even simple programs frequently have both video and audio. Printers are also output devices, and they vary as widely as monitors. The most common types are dot matrix printers, laser printers, and inkjet printers. Dot matrix printers use little dots to create letters and graphics. They vary with resolution and make letters look a little ragged. Inkjet printers, sometimes referred to as bubble jets, also use little dots to create images. They, however, group the dots much closer together than dot matrix printers, so their images look much better. Laser printers create images using a process similar to copiers. They fuse ink to the paper in a heat process. Laser printers are generally faster and more expensive than inkjet printers, but they do produce better looking text and graphics. There's more choices available in I/O hardware, but you get the idea. As I mentioned earlier, the input-output devices are usually the easiest to understand because you can see them. But the brains of the computer are inside the box, where you normally can't see them. Suzanne, let's take a quick tour of this environment, and then break down each of its components. A computer is built around a piece of hardware called a motherboard, which is simply a board with some electronic pathways and slots to hold other parts. Three important components reside directly on the motherboard: the CPU chip, pipeline burst cache, and the memory chips. The slots on the motherboard are places for controller cards to be plugged into. Other hardware typically found inside the box includes a hard drive, a floppy disk drive, a CD-ROM drive, and an internal modem. As you can see by this simplified illustration, it can get pretty crowded in there, and of course, it's important that they are able to work together without any conflicts. Now let's start with the part of the computer that actually computes: the central processing unit. In our ad, the system's CPU is listed as a 300 MHz Pentium 2 with MMX technology. The CPU, or processor, is the main computer chip that processes data. Basically, it takes the data and instructions that you input and turns them into output. For example, when you press the letter A on the keyboard, it turns into a binary code as it moves through the keyboard cable to the motherboard, where it is stored briefly in memory and pipeline burst cache until the CPU reads it. Then it sends a different signal to the monitor, where it converts the binary code into the letter A on the screen.
Professor, I understand that Pentium is like a brand name from Intel, but what's 300 megahertz and MMX technology?
Megahertz is a way of measuring electronic speed. A higher number is faster, so the system can handle more tasks more quickly. MMX technology is a class of chips designed especially for audio-visual processing tasks such as games. The CPU can only process data that is first stored in memory. Computer memory is handled by RAM chips. Our ad indicates 64 megabytes of EDO RAM. A byte is the measuring unit for information, and it's about the same as one character, like an A or the number 1. A megabyte is 1 million bytes, about 1 million characters of data. Essentially, the advertised system's temporary memory should be able to store 64 million bytes of information, which can come in handy since many software packages require 12 or more megabytes of RAM in order to run. Suzanne, we have another form of memory available to us. It's called pipeline burst cache. It is located directly on the motherboard next to the processor. It acts as a conduit between RAM and the CPU. This boosts your computer's performance by allowing the processor quick access to data on the memory chips. Suzanne, before we move on, there is one essential fact that you should remember about RAM. It is temporary. If the power is shut off to your system, fortunately, there is a way to permanently save what's in memory to disk. We've seen how information or data is processed by your computer, but how did it get there? All the data your computer uses comes from the permanent storage devices. Floppy disks, hard drives, and CD-ROMs are the most common permanent storage devices. These disks are used to store your programs, such as a game or word processor. When you start these programs, your computer loads all the necessary data into memory so you can work with that program. The floppy disk and hard drive are also used to store the things you create, such as a letter. You can also copy and store data from one disk to another. In order to see the information on a floppy disk, it must be inserted into the floppy disk drive. The hard disk has much more storage capacity than floppies. The advertised system lists a 3.1 gigabyte hard drive as part of its features. A gigabyte is 1,000 megabytes, so this hard drive can hold essentially 3,100 megs of data. Most application programs come on floppy disks or on CD-ROM. When programs are installed on your computer, they are essentially copied from the floppy disks or CD-ROM onto the hard drive. Most computers, including the one in our ad, come with a CD-ROM drive. CD-ROMs hold a lot of information but have one drawback. ROM stands for read-only memory, which means the drive can only read information from the CD. You cannot store or write additional information to the CD. CDs you can write to are available but are not standard in the market at this time. There are other data storage devices that are used for storing large amounts of data. Some popular backup hardware units are Zip, Jazz, or SyQuest removable mass storage drives. They can even be used to keep backup copies of everything on your hard disks. This is a good idea because hard disks can fail. Now let's look at using the computer to communicate with the outside world. Most new computers come with a modem or a fax modem. Ours is no exception. A modem is a translator and a necessary piece of hardware if you wish to access the internet or email someone. It translates a computer signal to an analog signal so it can be transferred along the phone lines. Modems send and receive information at different speeds or baud rates. Our ad indicates 56K, which means kilobytes per second potential speed. You'll also notice that our ad lists the modem as a voice and fax modem. This modem allows you to use your computer to make and receive phone calls. Suzanne, that's a fairly quick overview of hardware options. Now let's turn our attention to the stuff that makes everything run, the software. It's easy to understand what application programs do, because they are the software that you use directly to do personal or business tasks like checkbook balancing, word processing, and playing games. Operating system software like Windows 98 is not as easy to understand because it handles all the background operations that make it possible for your other software and hardware to work together. Now let's start looking at the Windows 98 program and learn how it works. For this lesson, I assume everyone has turned on their computer and has Windows 98 up and running. Viewers, we'll use Suzanne's screen to point out some of the new features of Windows 98. Your screens will be different than hers, and as we tour Suzanne's computer, you can compare your system and decide which changes you want to adopt and which you do not. But in either case, make your own choices active. Let's quickly go over what Windows 98 is. As an operating system, Windows 98 handles all the functions that make it possible for you to use the computer. It is your user interface, which means it gives you a structured set of messages and commands to communicate with the system. It manages the resources of the entire system, all the hardware components, as well as all programs that are running. And it serves as kind of a traffic cop to direct the movement of data between the input, output, and storage devices and the CPU. The Windows 98 operating system handles all of these basic system tasks and more. Now let's take a closer look at your Windows 98 desktop and learn how to use the tools presented there. The Windows 98 screen view is called a desktop because it holds the tools similar to those you may have on your office desk. Like a regular desk, you may find documents or file folders scattered about, and it also gives quick access to other tools such as pens, erasers, a calculator, a telephone, and so forth. The Windows desktop is the plain colored background, and on top of that are the images of icons, mouse pointer, taskbar, and channels bar. You might not see the channels bar on your screen yet. Don't worry, you'll soon see how to turn it off and on. Icons are the smaller images generally lined up along the left side of your desktop. These represent programs and folders of information stored on your computer. The taskbar also appears on the desktop, usually across the bottom of the screen. In addition to the Start button, which is used to launch programs, the taskbar has 4 smaller buttons, called the Quick Launch Bar, that help manage your internet connection. The last part of the desktop new to Windows 98 is the Channels bar. This takes you directly to some internet websites if you are hooked up to the internet.
Professor, I understand that my computer screen is the desktop, but what do you mean by ways to view the desktop?
A very good question, Suzanne. With Windows 98, the desktop has a new option called the Active Desktop. If you have just upgraded from an earlier version of Windows, you probably do not have this option turned on unless you already had loaded Internet Explorer 4.0. If you're working with a new computer that has just had Windows 98 installed, it might or might not have the Active Desktop option turned on. The default option, that is the option that appears if you haven't made a choice yet, is called the Classic Desktop. We'll look at both the Classic and the Active Desktop and show you how to switch back and forth. Then you can set up your computer to suit your own style of working. If you've been using an earlier version of Windows, the Active Desktop uses different mouse click commands than you've been accustomed to using. The advantage is that your screen appearance and the mouse commands are fairly consistent whether you're working locally or on the net. Speaking of mouse click, Suzanne, that's the last item that appears on your desktop, your mouse pointer. It's the little arrow image that moves on screen as you move the mouse across the mouse pad. We'll see that the mouse pointer may change shape in some situations to indicate special actions available to you. Your mouse has buttons that are clicked to select and activate commands on the screen. The left mouse button is most frequently used for regular commands. The right mouse button opens shortcut or context menus. And some mice have a middle button that can be used for special features for specific application programs such as Microsoft Word. Many commands can also be given from the keyboard, but as a graphical user interface, Windows works most efficiently with the mouse. Let's take a look. First, we'll check a couple settings to be sure everyone is looking at the Classic Desktop view. Just follow along with Suzanne. Move your mouse slowly around the desktop without clicking any buttons, and watch the screen. When the pointer rests on a button on the taskbar, a small label pops up naming the button. You may notice that some of the small taskbar buttons have the same pictures and same labels as desktop icons. This is because they perform the same tasks. You'll quickly find that it's common in Windows. The program can be customized so you can select options that are most comfortable for the way you use the computer. We'll be pointing out those different options so you can make well-informed choices and learn some new tricks and shortcuts that you might not find on your own. Now, Suzanne, move your mouse pointer to a blank part of the desktop and click once on the right mouse button. This is a shortcut or context menu. A right button click opens this kind of menu almost anywhere in any Windows program, but the commands on the menu will be different according to what area of context your mouse is pointing to on the desktop. This menu shows commands that control the desktop. Commands that are gray and barely visible are not available at this time. This is another of the context-sensitive features of Windows. Different command options are available according to where you are in a program and what you are doing. At the top of the list you see Active Desktop with a little right pointing arrowhead. Move your mouse pointer to the Active Desktop line, and as it changes color, an additional menu appears. The arrowhead on the menu line always is. In this case, the choices are View Update Now. Suzanne's computer shows no checkmark on View as a web page, which indicates that it is an inactive choice right now. This is a toggle command, which means it turns on and off with a mouse click. When it is turned off, the desktop view is classic. Viewers, if you do have a checkmark, long to turn it off again. Suzanne, move your mouse pointer to the web page item so it is highlighted, and click your left mouse button once. You may notice the icons blink as the desktop screen repaints itself, and if you haven't seen the channels bar before, it may appear now. Again, don't worry if it doesn't. We'll come back and take a closer look at all of the features of the Active Desktop after we finish our tour of the basic tools in the Classic view. Remember, we're making sure everyone has the same view and learning how to change the settings. The shortcut menu disappeared, so you'll need to reopen it with a right mouse button click. Once again, point to the Active Desktop command and look at the web page item. There's a check mark next to it, indicating that it's turned on. To return to the Classic settings, move your mouse pointer to Customize My Desktop. This menu item has that a window full of additional choices, called a dialog box, will open. Click once with the left mouse button. We'll visit this Displays Properties window again in a few minutes, but this time, just click the button near the bottom labeled Folder Options and click Yes in the next dialog box. Click in the circle, called a radio button, next to Classic Style, and then click the OK button. I want you to make one more adjustment to your desktop, Suzanne. Right-click again to open the menu, and this time highlight Arrange Icons to see the submenu. There will be a check mark next to Auto Arrange if it is active. When active, this option automatically lines up your desktop icons. We want to do some arranging of our own, so left-click on Auto Arrange to remove the check mark if there is one, and just click anywhere on the blank desktop to close the shortcut menu if there is no check mark. Move your mouse pointer to the desktop icon labeled My Computer. It should be in the upper left corner of your screen. Don't click yet. While your mouse pointer is resting on the icon, you will see a little box pop up with information about what that icon does. The tips go away after a brief display, but you can always move your mouse pointer to a blank space to avoid the distraction. We've seen how a mouse click will open a menu and give a command on a menu. Let's look at another example of giving a command with a click, Suzanne. With your mouse pointer still on the My Computer icon, click the left button that this icon represents. Normally, we use the left mouse button for most commands, so in the future when I ask you to click, you should assume it is right mouse button click is needed. With your mouse pointer on the My Computer icon, press down and hold your left mouse button this is called a drag, as long as the icon or other selected object will move around on the screen button. When you release the button, the object is dropped in the new location. We have one final mouse command, Suzanne, in the classic desktop. With your mouse pointer on the My Computer icon, rapidly click the left button twice. Be careful not to move the mouse. It displays the contents of My Computer, that is, your computer. The icons here represent your disk drives and connections to other peripheral devices. And now, with the window open on the desktop, we have more new features to explore.
Professor, what exactly is a window?
Desktop. Each program that is opened appears in its own window. You can have many windows open and overlapping each side. When you opened My Computer, a new button appeared on the taskbar. As long as a program is open, that is, as long as the program is loaded in memory, it will have a button on the taskbar. We'll investigate the taskbar in greater detail later, but you can see now that an icon, a window, and a taskbar button all represent the same program. Each one indicates a different state in the program's activity. Let's go over the components of a window. The brightly colored top line of the window is called the title bar, and it tells you the name of the window, My Computer. On the right-hand corner of the title bar are 3 buttons. Move your pointer to the first one with the single line on it, Suzanne. This is the Minimize button. Click on it, and the window disappears from your screen. But the button still shows on the taskbar, showing us that the program is still loaded into memory. You can use the Minimize button to unclutter your desktop but still keep a program running and instantly available. Just click on the taskbar My Computer button, Suzanne, to reopen the window for use. The middle button on the title bar is another case of a context-sensitive feature. When the window is less than full, this button will maximize to full size. Or if the window fills up the entire screen, this button will reduce it to a less than full screen size, or restore. Move your mouse pointer to the middle button, Suzanne, and the tooltip as well as the symbol on the button will tell you which way it will go. Yours is maximize. Click once to see the change, and click the middle button again to see how the window returns to the original size. Leave this window in its less than full size state so you can see the desktop behind it. The third button, the X, is the Close button. Click the X, Suzanne. This one closes the window and takes the button off the taskbar, that is, exits the program and takes it out of memory. Now we'll reopen the window. Do you remember how to do that, Suzanne?
Sure, Professor. I'll move my mouse pointer to the My Computer icon and double-click.
Good for you, Suzanne. There's your window again. There is one more control button on the title bar. See the picture of a computer? Put your pointer on it and click. This is another way to size and close your window. Click on the title bar to close this menu. Now let's open a second window, but before we do, we'll switch to the active desktop and see the difference in mouse action. Since this is the newest and easiest way to use the desktop, We'll use the active desktop for the remainder of this lesson. Here's a different way to switch when you have a window open. Below the title bar in the window is the menu bar. The words that appear on this line are groups of commands or menus that will drop down when you click the word. Click the View command. You can see that the menu in a window looks and works very much like the shortcut menu you saw on the desktop. At the bottom of the list is Folder Options. Click that command. Does this dialog box look familiar? It's the same one we used to select Classic Style. This time we want Web Style, so click that radio button and click OK. After the settings change, your window repaints itself on the screen, and you might notice the channels bar on the desktop again behind the window. Inside the window, icon and folder labels now have an underline. The active desktop changes to look and act like the web browser program Explorer 4.0. All the web browser features are not here, but they have incorporated a few functions so you can navigate through your personal computer the same way you navigate through web pages. For those of you who have been on the internet, this will look familiar. For those of you who haven't, you'll learn how this works and can apply this information when you do. Let's get back to the components of the window. You can use the title bar of the window as a place to grab onto the window and move it. Move your pointer up to the title bar, Suzanne, and click and hold the left button. Drag the window to the right so you can see the first row of icons on your desktop. The desktop icons are now underlined too. This underlining is an indicator on the active desktop that the label item will open a new window or a new web page with a single mouse click. Something else is different from the classic view. First, click anywhere on the blank desktop to make it active. Move your mouse pointer to the recycle bin icon on the desktop. It looks like a little trash can. When your mouse pointer moves across an icon in active desktop view, it changes to a hand. On the active desktop, the pointer position is a dynamic part of the screen environment. Pointer select is a feature of the active desktop that matches what a single click does in the classic view. This pointer activated selection is one of the ways Windows 98 makes your desktop act like a web page. With your mouse pointer on the recycle bin icon, click once to open the window. If the window fills up the screen, click the restore button to reduce its size so you can see both Windows and the desktop. It's okay if they overlap. You can also see the two buttons on your taskbar, indicating that two programs are loaded into memory. This is an example of multitasking. Multitasking means you can have more than one program opened and running at the same time. This Windows feature allows you to easily switch from one program to another and to move or copy information between these programs. Since it's the last one you opened, the recycle bin button on the taskbar is selected and is the active window. You can tell the active window because it appears to be on top of the other window, and its title bar is brightly colored. Only one window on the desktop can be active at a time, but it's easy to switch from one to another to do work in different programs. Since we can see a part of the My Computer window, just click once any place in the window to activate it. It now appears on top of the other window.
Professor, what if a window was covered up so I can't click it? How do I move it back on top?
If you can't see it on the screen, just click the taskbar button. Do that now to move the recycle bin back out front. You can also resize a window so it's easier to see both. This is useful if you're frequently moving back and forth between windows. Move your mouse pointer to the left edge of the recycle bin window called the border. Watch the mouse pointer. When it changes to a black two-sided arrow, you can click and drag the border to change the size of the window. Enlarge the window until you see blue sky behind the large title on the left. The split window view doesn't show up properly when the window is small. You can resize from any border, sides, top, or bottom, and from the corners you can size diagonally as well. Sizing windows is a good mouse exercise to improve hand-eye screen coordination, and it comes in handy if you have several windows open on the desktop. The title bar and borders will help you manage your windows on the desktop. Now let's take a closer look at the items that help you perform tasks inside the window. These are the menu bar, toolbars, scroll bars, status bar, and workspace. Click on the My Computer window to activate it. The area showing the icons and folders is called the workspace. If this was a word processing program, this is where your typing would appear. Looking at this window, we see it's very full of file folder icons. It's so full, in fact, that the window isn't big enough to show them all. There's a scroll bar at the right side of this window, indicating that there's more vertical information to see. Scroll bars may appear on the side and bottom of a window. When you see them, you'll know the size of the window is not big enough to display all of the available text or graphics in that window. Moving these bars brings more of the information into view. Move your pointer to the box inside the scroll bar, Suzanne, and drag it down. You can see the view in the window moving to show additional folders and files further down on the page. When you drag up, the view follows, moving back to the top of the viewing area. You can also click on the arrows at the top or bottom of the scroll bar to move the view up or down in small jumps. Remember that a scroll bar always appears when there's more to see than the window can display, so it's an indicator to look further than what you see immediately. The next element of a window is the menu bar. It is almost always located immediately below the title bar, although in some windows it can be moved. We've looked at some menus already and have an idea of how they work. The File, Edit, and Help all applications that run in Windows. The View menu, which we used a moment ago to change to the active desktop web page view, has several new commands in Windows 98 and is standard in most of the windows that appear in this commands related specifically to the program running in a given window. We can use keyboard commands or a mouse to open menus. Notice that each menu name has one of its letters underlined. You can press the Alt key with the underscored letter to open that menu from the keyboard. For example, Suzanne, hold the Alt key and press the letter V. When the menu opens, you can see that each of the commands has one letter underlined also. Simply press that key without the Alt key to select that command. A click on any of these menu items may immediately affect that. We've seen this in the menu commands used already in this lesson, so let's just pull it together with a quick review. Plain commands are effective immediately. An arrowhead indicates a cascading submenu of options. A three-dot ellipsis indicates a dialog box that requires additional choices or information. A checkmark, big dot, or dot in a circle indicates that menu option is already selected. The menus contain all the commands you can ever use in a program, Suzanne. Below the menu bar in most windows, you'll usually find one or more toolbars. Toolbars are a long-time feature of Windows, but in Windows 98 and on the active desktop, there are some new twists, and some of these new features appear only in operating system Windows. You may see them in ordinary applications when they upgrade to 98 versions. Let's be sure everyone has their toolbars visible. Toolbars is the first option on the View menu and is already highlighted. It has an arrowhead indicating a cascading submenu. Press your right arrow key this time to see the additional choices. The checkmark shows that standard buttons, address bar, and text labels are all active. We want links selected also, so click on that selection. Viewers, if these options are not checked on your screen, select them now. The menu will close after each selection, so you'll need to reopen it if you need to add additional checks. While we're here, be sure you also have a check mark next to Status Bar. Click outside the menus to close buttons below the menu bar. The first row is the standard toolbar, which has buttons for some of the most common menu commands. These give you one-click access to commands that you could also find in various menus, but they're much faster from the toolbar. Like a menu, if a button stays pale or grayed out when you point to it, it's not an active command. And some buttons have arrows to indicate additional options. Below the standard toolbar is the address bar. The address bar displays the name of the current open window, My Computer. This is an example of making the local desktop look like a web browser that shows the address of the page you are viewing. Click the drop-down arrow to the right of the words My Computer. The list you see is called a folder hierarchy, a map of the file storage locations on your computer. It's a slightly different way of representing the same information you see in the My Computer window. See, there's My Computer near the top of the list, and indented below that are the disk drives on your computer. Viewers, your list may include different items than Suzanne's, depending on how your system has been set up. But everyone should have a hard drive, which is usually identified by the letter C. Click on the C drive, Suzanne. Look at your window now.
Hold it, Professor. What happened to the My Computer window?
Its window has been replaced with the C drive window. This is a very good example of how your desktop acts like a web browser. When you selected a new address, a different location on your own computer in this case, the window changed to that view. Let's see another example of how this works. Click on the Recycle bin to activate it. Open the address drop-down display. Now we bin. When you switched to a new address, the back button on the standard toolbar also became active. Click the back button, Suzanne, and your window returns to the view of the Recycle bin. Click the forward button to move ahead to the My Computer ones, but by using your back and forth buttons, you can switch from one to another. Let's move on to the Links toolbar. Click on the C drive window again. The Links toolbar appears to the right of the address bar. Viewers, you may need to stretch out your window to see it, or you can make the address bar smaller. Move your mouse pointer to the vertical line between the address drop-down arrow and the word Links. The pointer will change to a two-sided arrow when you have the right spot. You should recognize this pointer symbol as to give a little more space to the Links bar if it's needed. If some of the link buttons still don't show, there's an arrowhead at the right side of the toolbar that works much like a scroll bar to display the right. A similar button appears on the left side of the toolbar for scrolling back to the connect directly to specific pages on the World Wide Web. When you point to a button, the web address shows in the pop-up tip. When you connect to a web page, its address shows in your address toolbar. These buttons can only make the connection, however, if the computer is connected to the internet. That's the topic for a later lesson, so we won't get into these buttons today. You can also control the vertical space allocated to your toolbars. Move your mouse pointer to the bottom of the toolbar. When the two-sided sizing arrow appears, drag the line down until your bars form 3 lines. Or you can push up until everything is jammed onto one row. Let's leave ours as it was, so move your sizing arrows up to put the Links bar beside the address bar.
Gee, Professor, there's a lot more to these windows than meets the eye.
There sure is, Suzanne. And speaking of more, there's one more area to point out, and that is the status bar. It is at the bottom of the window and does exactly what its name says. It displays information about the status of whatever's happening in the window. The types of information change according to what's happening. For example, Suzanne, move your mouse pointer to the Program Files folder. When the pointer selects the object and it changes color, the status bar tells you about the number of objects selected. Depending on what is selected and the size of your window, it will also display the size of the selected item and the amount of free disk space. In the left side of the window workspace are more details about the object. The name Program Files and the fact that it is a file folder and the date it was last modified. File size and other information on the selected item will also display here. Suzanne, I believe we've covered most of the elements that make up a window. It's a lot, isn't it? I think you'll find that these tools and skills become automatic very quickly once you've seen them in action. Now we'll move down to the bottom of your desktop and learn how the taskbar helps you manage the jobs running on your computer. As usual, let's start by making sure everyone has a similar view. First, if you do not see the taskbar at the bottom of your screen, move your mouse pointer down slowly and it should pop up when the pointer nears the bottom of the screen. Now, move the pointer to a blank place in the taskbar and click your right mouse button to open the shortcut menu. Click on Properties at the bottom of the list. This opens the Taskbar Properties dialog box. Properties is the term for all the settings and choices defined for an object. What that object is, what it looks like, and what it is allowed to do. The object might be a menu button, a graphic or block of text, or in this case, the taskbar. This dialog box has tabs for different pages to view. Click on the Start Menu Programs tab. We get another page full of choices. We won't do anything here, so click back on the Taskbar Options tab again. This page displays a sample screen and lists 4 checkbox options. Viewers, if your taskbar was hidden, there will be a check mark in the box for Auto Hide. Click in the box to remove that option for the remainder of this lesson. You can turn it back on later if you prefer. Click the boxes to add or remove check marks as needed to match Suzanne's screen, where the active options are always on top and show clock. Click OK to close the Properties dialog box and keep the properties that you selected. The taskbar has 4 areas used for the tasks it handles. You've already seen the task list, where buttons appear when a window is open. The Start button opens the Start menu, where you have access to all the programs and files on your computer, whether or not they have icons on the desktop. The Toolbar is right next to the Start button. Unlike a toolbar in a window, this is for desktop functions like launching programs. The Notify or Status area is the far right space where you see the time displayed and other icons that may change from time to time according to events on your computer. Like the other desktop objects we've seen, we can move the taskbar from the bottom of the desktop to the side or top. Suzanne, click the left button, this time in a blank space just above the taskbar, and drag it to the right side of your screen. When you release the mouse button, it will line up vertically with the Start button at the top. And you can make it wider as well. Move your mouse pointer to the edge until it changes to the 2-sided sizing arrow, and drag it to the left about an inch. Well, that takes up way too much of the desktop, so let's return it to the bottom and to standard size. Just click in a blank space and drag back to the bottom of the screen. Much better. These are all controls for the appearance of the taskbar. Now let's see what it can do. Move your mouse pointer to the far right over the clock. The pop-up tip also shows the date. Next to the clock will be icons representing programs running in background, such as a virus checker. You can check what they are by moving the mouse pointer on it and reading the pop-up tip. Right-click in the blank space, Suzanne. There are 4 commands that manage the arrangement of your open windows on the desktop: Cascade, 2 ways to tile, and minimize all. Click Cascade. This lines up your open windows right under each other. Right-click in the taskbar again, and this time select Toolbars to see the sub-menu. This item refers to the set of buttons that appear to the right of the Start button. The check mark indicates that the toolbar currently showing is Quick Launch. You can also see that the Address and Links toolbars, which we saw in our tour of window elements, can be added to the taskbar so they are available even if a window is not open. Toolbars that can appear on the taskbar are something new in Windows 98. Click anywhere outside this menu to close it, and let's move along to the workhorse of the taskbar, the Start button. Before we do, let's clean up our desktop a bit. Click on the blank space on the taskbar again and select Minimize All Windows. The windows disappear from the desktop but are still active, showing on the taskbar. Now right-click on the desktop. Since we won't be using the Channels bar in this lesson, let's close it also. Highlight Active Desktop and choose Customize My Desktop. From this Display Properties dialog box, uncheck the Internet Explorer channel bar. Click Apply, and it's gone from view. You can always repeat these steps to turn it back on. Click OK and right-click on the desktop one more time. Highlight Arrange Icons, and in the next menu select Auto Arrange. The icons automatically line up again. It looks a lot better now. The Start button on the taskbar is somewhat comparable to the menus in a window. Although you have shortcuts, icons, and toolbars elsewhere, this is the ultimate source for every program and file located on your computer. Click your Start button, Suzanne. It opens the Start menu where you can start programs, open files, change the system configuration, get help, and shut down the computer. Viewers, your start menu will differ from Suzanne's, reflecting the programs that have been loaded onto your computer. But the general organization and groupings are consistent on all Windows computers. If you have a lot of items on your start menu, you may need to scroll up or down to see them all. Arrowheads at the top or bottom of the menu will indicate when this is needed. The start menu has three divisions. At the top are icons that open specific programs installed on your computer. Some of these might also have icons on your desktop, but in either case, they are customized to your individual system. The middle and bottom sections of the menu are standard Windows features, so we can all look at those. We'll review just a few of these that are very basic tools. The bottom section has two commands, log off and shut down. Both have the ellipsis that indicate a dialog box. Click on Shut Down, Suzanne. This one gives you three alternative choices and three buttons. Shutdown is a very important command, Suzanne. You should use this command whenever you want to turn off the power. An orderly shutdown will safeguard the files and programs on your computer. You should never turn off the computer with Windows or any other program still running. The shutdown process closes your files, clears instructions from memory, and returns any stray data elements to your disk storage. We don't really want to turn off the computer yet, so click the Cancel button to abandon this command. Anytime you want to leave a dialog box without activating the commands in it, you can use Cancel. It will close the box without taking any action, even if you've made some selections. Open the Start menu again, Suzanne. Just above the Shutdown command is Log Off. The difference here is that the log off leaves the operating system software in RAM memory but clears the desktop and any custom settings for one user and prepares the system for a different user to sign on. For example, different members of a family might each have their own sign-on and password set up, with their own choices for desktop setup. When one leaves and the next comes to use the computer, a log off makes those changes effective for the new user without a full shutdown. Moving up on the list is the Run command. This command is used primarily to start programs that don't reside on your computer, a game on a CD for example. It's also used to start the install process for new software programs you want to add to your computer. The Help command is pretty self-explanatory and very useful to seek out the answers to specific questions about Windows 98. The Find command is a powerful tool, Suzanne. Move your pointer onto it and see the submenu choices. Find not only helps you look for the useful files or folders, it also opens access to search tools on the internet, as you can see by the menu choices. We'll use this command to look for a file in our Level 2 lesson. Some of the Settings commands were included in right-click menus earlier in this lesson, Suzanne, and we'll come back to look at some more as the final topic in this lesson, so let's move on for now. That brings us to three major items on the Start menu: Programs, Favorites, and Documents. All three are simply ways of opening files and working with them on your computer.
So what's the difference, Professor, if they all open files?
A program file is a collection of commands, Suzanne. Most popular programs are fairly large and complex sets of commands that are built around specialized tasks, such as playing a game or doing word processing. The programs listed depend on what has been loaded onto the computer, so viewers, your list will differ from Suzanne's. A document file is created by a program. For example, a letter is a document created in a word processing program or a picture in a drawing program. The documents in this submenu are the most recent ones created on this computer. You can use this list to reopen a document you worked on recently and continue working on it. When you select a document from this submenu, it automatically launches the program that we used to create it. The Favorites is a list you build for yourself to give you quick access to your own preferred programs, documents, and websites. Let's see how this works, Suzanne. Move your mouse pointer to the Programs menu, then to Accessories on the submenu. This opens another submenu. Now move to Notepad. Make sure to move your mouse straight right, then down, or you'll lose your submenu when you highlight something else in the first menu. You can see how the submenus organize your programs into groups. Once Notepad is highlighted, click once to launch the program. The title bar in this new window tells you that it is untitled in Notepad. You can recognize the menu bar in this window even though the specific commands are somewhat different from the ones we looked at previously. Since this is an application program, there is no address bar, links bar, or back and forth buttons. Also, since this is a very basic word processor, there is no toolbar. Not a lot of options in this program, but if you need to keep quick notes, this is the place, and it will be sufficient for our purposes right now. The flashing black line in the blank workspace is the insertion point, or the place text will appear when you start typing. We're going to create a file, Suzanne, and save it. We could, as a matter of fact, save a perfectly empty file. The computer doesn't care, but let's put some words onto it for our own convenience so we can see that something is really there. So type the words Test 1, Suzanne. Press the Enter key to make a new line and type, "This is a document file." That's all we need. Now we have something in the document to save, so move your mouse pointer to the File menu and click. On the pull-down menu, point to Save As. Don't click yet. We know that a dialog box will appear since there's a 3-dot ellipsis following. Looks like the right command, so click it, Suzanne. The Save As dialog box asks you for the necessary information to save your file in the proper location. The top line has a drop-down text box that says My Documents and several toolbar buttons. The middle space, called the Files and Folders area, shows files that are already stored in that space. We haven't saved any yet, so this space is empty. Click the drop-down arrow next to My Documents, Suzanne. This list looks like the one you saw on the address bar in the Recycle Bin window a while ago. It is in fact the same list, but we're coming into it from a different point here. I think this would be a good time to explain the structure of the Windows 98 filing system, how it organizes files and folders so you can easily find what you want, as well as save your documents in the proper location. There is a hierarchy to the system. As you can see in the visual file structure, the desktop is at the top. That is because everything you can find on your system resides first on the desktop. Under Desktop is My Documents. This is a default folder made for you to store your files, as you'll see in our demonstration. You should create your own folders within the program you are using to save your files. The next in command is My Computer. Everything on your computer, both hardware and software, can be found in My Computer. The next level is the drives where you store your programs and files. For example, your floppy drive, called the A drive, and the C drive, which is your hard drive. There can be more drives, but I'll keep this illustration simple and only deal with the C drive now. On the C drive, we have many more directions we can go on the next level down. This level holds your program folders such as Microsoft Office. The next level down in Office is all the programs it contains, a word processor, spreadsheet, database, and so on. Down from this level are folders you can create to hold your types of documents. Let's say business and personal. And finally, in these folders is where you store your documents. It is important that you understand file structure, so let me give you one more quick example of how it works. This is an analogy to the Office filing cabinet. We'll call the floor the desktop. The filing cabinet that sits on the floor represents My Computer. The drawers represent the drives. As you open the C drive door, you see folders for programs and other things are folders for specific projects you created, and within the project folders are the documents pertaining to that project. Now let's see how this works. Click the C drive icon, Suzanne. We now have a list of all the programs and files on the C drive. Let's move down another level. Click the Program Files icon. We now get a list of the programs and other files created in this Program Files folder. We could keep moving down levels to a word processing program and create our own folder for personal documents, but I think you're getting the idea, and I will cover creating folders in my Level 2 lesson. Let's see a little more how this Save As window works. See the folder with a up pointing arrow on it? Click on it. It will take you up one level at this point back to the C drive. Click on it again and we are taken to My Computer. Once more, the folder we see here is My Documents. You can use this or any location you choose to save a file, but we'll use this one for our file. Click on it to make it the chosen folder. The next icon will take you right back to the top level of your desktop again. Next, we see an icon we can click on to create our own folders. And next to that are two choices for how we view the file information in the window. Click the far right one and we see additional information about the files and folders, what type of file it is, and when last modified. We only have folders in our display, so we don't see file size. Select the list view and reselect the My Documents folder, and let's save our file. To save a file, you must select a location, which we just did, and you must give it a name. The file name text box below the file's list space shows the name Untitled right now. Not very informative, so we'll change it to our own name. Click your left mouse button at the beginning of the word and drag across the word to select it and release the button. Good. Now type VP Test 1. Your new typing will replace the selected word. Remember to give your file name something easy to remember so you'll know what it is later. You can use up to 255 characters, including spaces, to name a file. But avoid special characters like the asterisk, number sign, slash, period, etc. Below the file name is another text box labeled Save As Type, indicating that your file will be saved as a text type file. This is okay. No changes are needed here. With all the necessary questions answered, you can save your file, Suzanne. Click the Save button. Look at the title bar, Suzanne. Instead of Untitled, now it says VP Test 1, the name you gave it. And when you close a program, it will usually ask you if you want to save the files you've been working on. I'll show you. The insertion point is still where you left it. Press Enter to go to the third line and type another line. Now, click the File menu and click the Exit command at the bottom of the list. There's your safety net. Do you want to save the changes? Click Yes. You don't need to go through the Save As dialog box again because the file now has a name and a location. Well, it's gone from the screen. Is it saved? Let's open the file again and check it out. This time we'll open from the Documents menu. Click Start and point to Documents. The submenu has the My Documents folder at the top, so we can easily find any files you've saved into that folder. But look at the lower part of the menu, Suzanne. Since you were just working with it, your VP Test 1 is right there. Click on VP Test 1. Your computer will launch Notepad and your document automatically. Click on the X to close Notepad again, Suzanne. We've looked at all the major features of Windows 98 as a user interface and seen how the operating system manages files. The operating system also manages your computer resources, including all the hardware connected to the CPU. Let's take a quick look at one example of that process. The control panel is where you find these controls. First, let's practice good memory management and close any unneeded windows. Click on the C drive button. Once opened, click on the Close button. We can find the control panel from the Start menu or from the My Computer desktop icon. Since we still have My Computer opened on the taskbar, let's click on it to display its window. Point to the control panel, Suzanne. The icon has a picture of small tools. Click once to open the control panel. Once again, you can get a description in the left side of your window by pointing to an item in the right side, so exploring on your own will be easy. Let's check out just one example. Highlight the display icon, Suzanne. We see that this changes the display settings. Go ahead and click on it. Now we have a dialog box for display properties. Click the tab for appearance, Suzanne. This set of controls defines the colors you see on your screen and what they mean. You can see some of the screen features labeled in the sample window. Below the sample is a text box marked Scheme with a drop-down menu arrow. Your current scheme is Windows Standard. Click the arrow to see the list of color schemes available. These choices are default schemes that change the color of your desktop and other parts of the window. Click on Storm. You will need to use the scroll bar to see all the choices. Our preview window shows how this will look. Try another. How about marine? Well, that's interesting. Let's stay with the Windows standard for now. It is located at the bottom of the list. Viewers, choose anything that might interest you. Just below the Scheme text box is another marked item. Click that drop-down arrow to see the list of objects that can be assigned colors. The desktop is currently selected, and the greenish color shows in the selection box to the right of the list. Leave desktop active and click the drop-down menu for colors. How about a bright yellow desktop, Suzanne?
I don't think so, Professor. I have to spend a lot of time at my computer, and that color might get old pretty quickly.
Well, change it back to blue. Viewers, you can play around and find the colors you want. If you want to use those colors, click the Apply button. If not, just click Cancel and no changes will take effect. Well, that's all the time we have for this lesson. I suppose we should learn how to properly turn off the computer before we finish. First, close all open windows so nothing shows on the taskbar. Now select the Start menu and select Shutdown. With Shutdown already selected, just click OK and the computer will shut down and turn itself off. You will need to manually turn off other hardware such as your monitor and printer. Thank you for being such a good student, Suzanne. And remember, there is much more you can learn from me, the Video Professor.